Welcome to Ask Dr. Change. I'm Dr. Linda Ackerman Anderson. I'm happy to have you join me today to explore how to seriously up-level your leadership and consulting to transformational changes, all through conscious change leadership. Welcome. Today I want to talk to you about a very important decision that gets made that has profound influence on how well your major changes, especially transformational changes, can go. I'm talking about pacing strategy. Very different than schedule, very different than timeline, although they all relate to time. Pacing strategy has a number of factors that relate to it that help you to shape it. One of those is, the definition of it is the speed of change. We frequently think about that as how fast can we go? That's the question I've gotten, by the way, that has prompted this conversation. How fast can we go? So it relates to the speed of change, which totally depends upon the amount of time required to do the actual work. So it's not something that we can just make an assumption about and lock in at the beginning. So first element of pacing strategy, speed. Second element of pacing strategy is the scope of the organization that will undergo the change at any point in time. Are we going to do everybody all at once? We'll talk about that in a moment. The third element of pacing strategy is your rollout sequence. There are a number of elements and choices in terms of figuring out your rollout sequence. Are you going to go all at once? Next Tuesday, the lights go on, and that's it. So all at once is one of four options. The second option is we're going to roll this out by phases so that one phase completes before the next phase goes, or perhaps they actually overlap. The third option for your pacing strategy is sequentially putting the organization through a series of steps, independent steps. Again, that one part goes through this phase, one part goes through this step, and this step. But they happen independently of each other. And the fourth element is gradual, incremental, evolutionary over a period of time. So 4 things to determine your rollout sequence: all at once, by phases that overlap, sequentially through independent steps, and gradual, incremental, or evolutionary. So what are all the factors that would have you choose one over the other? We're so accustomed to leaders saying, tell me how long this is going to take, and I want it to go faster. Timeline is when it starts, you do the work, and when it ends, and is profoundly influenced by your pacing strategy. But if you don't step back and think, how are we actually going to roll this thing out? You can't possibly come up with a timeline, because is it the whole organization does it? Is it just deployment that we're timing? You really need to look at all the dynamics at play. Now, a really important piece at this point is to look at the scope of your change. Are there priority elements that must go first? Is there a sequence to the pieces that have to be addressed in your transformation? How much of the scope can happen at once? How much of the scope is sequential? We often think of business strategy as influencing, this is highest priority, it needs to go first, and that can follow, and that can follow. The same is true with your pacing strategy. How can you divvy it up? One of the other benefits of doing a pacing strategy is that oftentimes when you fully flush out a 4-quadrant scope, remember that is mindset, behavior, culture, and the organizational content, the systems pieces of it. When you create a 4-quadrant scope, it's really important to look at what pieces of it are actually essential to go first and what pieces can be sequenced over time. So often when we get a full scope, leaders get overwhelmed, and they frequently will say, we can't do all this, or we want to do all of this at once. And so looking at your scope can be balanced, especially if it's a large magnitude, by your pacing strategy, that we're not going to take it all at once. We're going to take parts A, B, and C in year one, and D, E, F in year two, and so on in subsequent years. It helps calm everybody down. It helps to understand the priorities, the sequence, and the importance of what gets rolled out where in the organization. Are you going to deploy new operating practices everywhere in all of your field units or all of your sites? Or can you do a pilot in one, see how it goes? That's a pacing strategy. And then assess the impact of that, how you would do it differently, and take it to the next site. All of that is a great indication of your pacing strategy. And so who does this? If you think about it, certainly your sponsor needs to be involved in this, and the leaders that have to align to making the change, they need to be a part of this. Is their organization going to be upset and derailed by the change in year one, or can they prepare for it in year two, or whatever your timing is? So it really is a collective conversation. Clearly, consultants will have an influence over this when we look at an understanding of what needs to go first and what can be in sequence. So it's important to understand who needs to be involved in this. And again, it's a very different conversation than timeline. How fast can this go? Well, pacing strategy delves into what's the this we're talking about, how much of this, where, over what period of time. I'm hoping I'm making the point about the importance of this stop action and have these considerations. Part of your decision will be dependent upon how much change is saturating the organization at any point in time. Are you in a budgeting cycle where no one has the space to do anything else? Do you have the capacity required? Do you have the resources required? Is there a way of generating more resources if we delay until next year? All of these considerations are important. Readiness, as I mentioned, capacity, depth of understanding of the magnitude, the impact of the work you're asking of the organization to take on, in addition to its operations. All of these things need to be taken into account when you're considering the whole issue of time, schedule, timeline, and most importantly, pacing strategy. So my pro tip for you today is to look at the scope of the change that you're undertaking and look through the lens of what needs to go first, what needs to go second or third. Can we do it all at once? What's the impact of that? Do we have capacity for this? Do we have the skills? If we're bringing in external consultants to support that, what does that do to our pacing strategy? I have many examples of external consultants coming in and saying, if we can get this done by X time, for you, will you give us a bonus? Or not asking, but declaring, then we get a bonus. And that totally disrupts the whole idea of a serious look at pacing strategy. And yes, your external consultants may need to be a part of that. That's legitimate, but not motivated to meet a timeline. The whole issue of schedule is king is a very detrimental one to truly understanding the magnitude of work and how much time it will take, given the condition of the organization, to take on that work. When do you determine pacing strategy? Clearly upfront. It can be a part of your change strategy in phase one of the Change Leaders Roadmap. When we're talking about timeline, which we estimate in your change strategy in phase one, that is the time when you begin to have a fully fleshed out scope, a 4-quadrant scope, you can begin to talk about pacing strategy. And again, do so collectively and understand the implications of one choice all at once, or by phases, or by steps, or evolutionary, a little incremental over time. All of those have impacts for how you're actually going to build your roadmap for the change. So my pro tip again is check out the scope through all of these lenses and organize the sponsor and the change leaders that have to address this change, support and champion this change, to have the conversation about pacing strategy. Now, personal reflection for you. Are you understanding enough, confident enough in your understanding of the options for pacing strategy and how it is so different from timeline and schedule? They're related, but they're different. And the benefits of pacing strategy have enormous effect on your ability to orchestrate sanity as the change rolls out. And so personally, your level of confidence, personally, your understanding of the options and how to interpret those options so that a choice can be made that's realistic and supportive of the changes that are being required of the organization. So it has to do with you personally and what your relationships are like with the people who have to stop action to have the conversation about pacing strategy, rather than them sending off scope, schedule, budget, tell us how long it's going to take, et cetera, because that's, again, necessary information, all a guesstimate at the beginning of the change. And pacing strategy helps to reveal just how big, how important, and how impactful the various aspects of your scope are going to be on the organization. So personally, are you prepared to set up those conversations with the right people? Are you confident enough to understand the implications? That's what's most important here. So I'm hoping that I'm able to change the conversation and your decision-making around how fast the change can go through the lens of pacing strategy. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope you found some value in this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope you gained some valuable insights for your work. Please send me your questions and challenges by going to askdrchange.com.